First off, we want to bring onto stage the co-creator, the beautiful, talented Rio, Miss Lake Bell. And right behind her, we are going to bring to the stage, I can't even believe I'm about to say these words, Pam Grier. That's right. And right behind her is the very talented woman that directed that episode and episodes of many shows that you enjoy that we'll be talking about, Miss Anya Adams. Please join us on stage. So I think that originally maybe Liz Merriweather was listed as somebody that was going to be here today.
Yes,
But,
I will
she
say
was
that.
unable to be.
Yeah, we divide and conquer. That's like how this sort of ship runs. And we just started our writers' room on Monday, so we were kind of like, all right, we got to figure this out, the timing of it. So she's in the writers' room right now, and she apologizes for not being here.
I think that we would rather have her there making more show.
Yeah, I mean, she's got to be. Yeah, exactly. She's generating content, you guys.
The watchword of 2019. Yeah. Well, first, I want to start with
What, content?
Yes.
Yeah, just content.
Just
Yeah.
content.
We're gonna send out pins that just say content.
I don't know, that's both depressing and exciting. I want to talk about the genesis of this show and what your original inspiration was. Where you were like,
Yeah.
hey, let's move to Nebraska and start a farm.
Yeah, I mean, it started, just speaking of content, there was, Liz and I sort of sat on a couch one day. We've been friends for a really long time since we did No Strings Attached. She wrote No Strings Attached, that movie with Ashton Kutcher and Natalie Portman. Okay, so one person knows it. It's good, starting strong. She wrote that movie and I was in it, and I ostensibly play her in it, which is this deeply neurotic, kind of apologizing for the space that she takes up kind of person. And I was like, you're amazing. I want to be friends with you forever. And then, so years and years passed, and New Girl was coming to an end, and she, was going to be a free agent. And I had just had my second baby, and I was like, hey, you just got married. I got married. Do you want to talk about marriage and stuff and make a show? And she was like, sure. And so we literally just started spitballing, and we found we kept trying to think of ideas, but then we kept coming back to sort of gently about marriage, and in the kindest, most respectful way, and just laughing about the fodder that occurs within the first year of marriage, that sort of space where you're putting your best version of yourself forward, and so that was the first concept. But we were like, we don't want to set a show, another sort of marriage show, figuring each other out in LA, it's that just felt stale. So then I came clean with a fantasy that my husband Scott and I have, which is, he's from Texas. He's from Houston. And I just had to say that here.
Texas forever.
It's just contractually obligated to say that. So I have in-laws here, meaning I have family here. And he's incredibly capable. He's an extraordinary man who can kind of I was joking before that, he's the kind of guy who would wrestle an alligator or something, but I think he might have literally done that. Just when, I talked to his parents and stuff. But so the point is, we always talk about, he's a prepper and an apocalypse guy, and we love the idea that we could maybe just go and forge into the countryside and own a plot of dirt and shed all of this media and content and high octane kind of stimulation that we are, even the news and everything. There's just so much information that it is a fantasy that I'm not alone in it. If there's a New York Times article, I mean, you live it. We'll get to that in a second. It's amazing. But yeah, there's definitely a zeitgeist of that people want to kind of sort of simplify and sort of find purity in living simpler, and sort of the earth. And so that's where it came from. Because taking someone like me, who I'm from Manhattan, and literally, and I'm not saying you would eat me in an apocalypse, but I'm saying, I can organize a pantry, I don't know, so my husband, this is juxtaposing sort of personalities between me and my husband. We found that interesting. That's a lot.
So you would, so what you're saying is you wouldn't do as well as even Rio and
They fed me a hard cider before I got on here, so, Jesus.
It's all about the timing. Well, I want to talk about casting, first of all, to the woman to your left, who you've got to see all these episodes because she is so hilarious in this show and her interpersonal reactions with Ed Begley Jr. How did you come to get Miss Grier to agree to do this? And Pam, talk a little bit about that relationship and how sexy it is.
Well, I have followed Lake's.
You have to use your.
Yeah.
I thought you could hear my ass. Okay, and I said, okay, let me, there you go. Lake, I have followed her work. She's a juju woman. I swear, she and Liz. She's been in the indie film in community for years, and I adore that. I love indie films. I saw her work, and it's complicated, and then I said,
Not an indie film.
I know it wasn't, but I saw your work in the tattoo. And I said, I got a tattoo on my butt. Look at that.
Oh, you mean the tattoo that I had in the movie?
Yeah,
Of
girl,
the
but you got
tiger?
tats on now.
Well,
I found out later.
I mean,
But
I married a
she just-
tattoo artist.
So I got a call from agent that said Lake Bell. And I said, Lake Bell? The Lake Bell? The writer, director, artist? What? They heard
I'm so
that you.
glad this is recorded because this is amazing. what you say.
You live. They're looking for a character that lives their story, their new pilot. And I went, do they really want to know?
Yeah.
It's, and they said, yeah. And so I said, well, no. Is there a script? No. Well, I don't. It's about the heartland. And when you have the heartland, people go to the heartland to find their hearts. And I did that. And I've always done that. People assume that I've lived in Los Angeles or New York and had a pool and ate chocolates and played, tennis and stuff like that by the pool.
That's what they thought.
And I said, no, I got chores. I got things to do. I come from the Black West, Wyoming, the Underground Railroad. And it was a luxury to come to LA, and I didn't. And so when they came up with, oh, my God, they said, Pam, you live it. I said, yeah, it's dirt.
It's true. When we first talked, you were like, I mean, you
I was
weren't like,
reticent. I didn't want anyone to make fun of
Yeah.
the heartland.
because you were like, you were actually like, not helping birth an animal, but like almost, like you were like in the field
I
whilst I was talking to you about a television show.
I was.
You remember?
But you were interested. She's a writer, a director, a visionary, and she really wanted to know what I did. And rarely, and it's so lovely when the director, the writer, creator says, tell me about you. I want to be authentic. I want to write well. I want to, and it's subtext. It's not just the surface of or the romanticism of moving to the country. It's the other stuff that you do. And she ain't heard half the shit. She'll go like, oh, Pam, I don't know if we can do that one. You're flooding the barn, and you got to go to the hardware store in the middle of the night to get a pump and pump it out so the horses can sleep.
I got to give them context a little bit because Pam lives on a ranch in Colorado.
It's all dirt.
And like
99
we didn't
and
even
me.
know that when we were just like, oh my God, Pam Grier.
So is she like a consultant in some ways on
Yes,
the
absolutely.
show?
Yeah, I'm like it. And I said, Harry, well, I got chores. I got so much to do. And, I just, if they're authentic, great. If not, I pass. And so, like, I want to talk to the sister. I want to talk to Pam. So I said, okay, she wants to talk to me. We good. And so she was so wonderful and creative in asking me about me. What did I do during the day? How is it? And I said, well, this could be, because it's reality, but it's funny every day how much poop you step in. And how you leave my door open, there's deer in the house.
Poop
And
remains
I'm
to be
saying,
funny.
wait, and my mom says, is that a dog? I said, Mom, it's got horns. It is not a dog. They come in my house. I got turkeys everywhere. I got chickens, mountain lions, bear, everything. And it's like, okay, this is good.
Take
And
it
so it is a wonderful character that my truck is a 99. You jerry-rig, you fix things, you go to the hardware store. It's not something you can go to Bergdorf Goodman or Needless Markup and find things that you need. I filled Lake in on Needless Markup.
Yeah, she calls them needless mark.
So anyway, y'all testifying. You've been there. So all the neighborhood kids love me. Everybody look, and I do watch out for the neighborhood. I'll plow in the morning before everybody gets up. Their kids come over when the parents aren't home. They love my lasagna. And all these kids are white, but they don't see me as a black woman. They see me as Auntie Pam. They see love. They see caring. And you don't see that a lot in TV or in the news. You know, they don't judge me. And it's so wonderful that these kids, everybody's name is Travis, Cody, and Caleb. And it's so I can keep up with everybody. So
They're all laughing.
and they're cute and the sweetest kids, I swear. And so they said, we want you to come out and talk to us. I said, okay. I got chores, though. I'll come after I do the chores. So I did my chores that morning before the car came. I took off my Spanx, so I had that badonka-donk going thing, you know. And I took off my Spanx for Lake, so you know what that's like.
It's true.
You committed. And I did my chores, so I smelled the part, I looked the part, I met with them, I had my leather gloves on, my hat and stuff. I looked pretty much like the cleaner. And I just said, you know, it fit. She asked the right questions and talked about animals and her character and her fear and her phobia. And I said, Rio is afraid of cows. Well, I said, well, cow ain't gonna hurt you unless you come at him with a knife and a fork. Then you got a problem. You know, everybody's cow and horse and buffalo stay at my house because they know they're safe. I have a sanctuary. I rescue horses for a therapeutic riding program and rescue anything and humans. And my ex-boyfriend, you know, he got away, thank God. But anyway, Lake and I, we got on so famously. And Liz, I love Liv's work. I love their work. And the fact that they're so authentic, so real. I said, I could bring a lot to that. I could bring a lot of dirt. That's why I'll never get a cold, because there's so much dirt in me. It keeps my immune system, you know, very strong. So she gave me a synopsis, and I said, this is true. All the millennials that are moving to the country are going exactly through what Rio and Mike go through. There's no quick, ain't nobody coming out like in an hour or two. You might get next week if I can fit you in, but I'm going fishing. So therefore, but it was so real and so wonderful, and that they were really interested in what I did, and from the Black West, the Underground Railroad. I learned from my granddad about how to hunt, fish, and shoot, and go fishing for catfish in the Platte in Nebraska. What type of line to use, 50-pound test line or 20.
It writes itself, you know.
You know, so you know, I said, I have a lot to share if they want to use it. But the fact that they were interested in
And
me
without
being,
knowing that.
you know, a country girl,
I
because they assume I'm Jackie Brown, but I'm not. I'm really a country girl, and that was my craft. But to have a spectrum of what you can bring from your narrative, it was so important that they really wanted to know, not just play the role, take off your clothes, kiss him, fight him, run. No, it's just. But she really, I just thought this is grounded, and this is a comedy because it's real. Let me tell you, every day is funny. Every day. Why is that turkey sitting on my bed? You know, why is the deer in the basement again? Who left the door open? You know, and so I have signs all over. I was telling this morning, no trespassing. I'm tired of burying the bodies. And if you're found here tonight, you'll be found here in the morning. And so I was able to bring a lot of living there for 50 years, and I've commuted to share my work, to be an actor. And as hard as it was driving to LA in a snowstorm or flying, getting up early in the morning, to just do and get what I could possibly get, to have a career, and how dedicated I was to sharing and telling narratives. And Bless This Mess is telling so many different narratives, so many subjects. I laughed. I was still screaming up there.
Well, Anya, I wanted to ask you specifically about a moment in this episode. And one thing about directing a show like this, when you have so many great ancillary characters and a bunch of different storylines going on, you laughed at something that I laughed at too the first time, that after she says no to him about the firefly, and then you go back to Mike and Rudy and Rio, but Pam's in the background and she's just like, oh.
Yeah. That was like seriously on the day my favorite thing. She just walked away and was like, damn it. And you just see her in the background, and it's so funny, but it was so true and like beautiful for, you know, Rudy and Pam's relationship. It's such a fun thing to play with on set.
And I'm guessing
He's
this is a fun
Rudy-licious.
show.
Come
He's
on
Rudy-licious.
now.
He is
He's
Rudy-licious.
Rudy-licious. I'm going to hit him with that soon.
He's a handsome guy.
He's so handsome.
He's so
Hey,
handsome.
wait until I start doing his laundry.
Bone structure.
Are you kidding me? And what he's going to learn is I threw it away, and I just got new ones. I couldn't
Well, you need to, yeah.
You got to learn how to work with them stains.
So I want to ask a little bit about Mike and Rio and making them, because I mean, they are on one level objectively terrible. Like,
Yeah, you mean just at most things?
and
Or
also just sort of the presumption that they have, and that Keckner's character, and by the way, amazing,
Keckner and
like,
Lennon.
is so great on this show.
So
But
good.
it seems like you are making a point to not make anybody a total stereotype.
It's
That
real-
even
yeah.
though that Mike and Rio are terrible, they clearly love each other. like they're trying to make compromises. So how do you, like with the male lady and with Hector's character, how do you balance sort of having them have these flaws, but having us still root for them?
It was really, well, you're touching on something which was really, really important to Liz and I, which is, Liz is from Michigan, and in the summertime, when they go on road trips and stuff, they would drive through Nebraska, and, for her, it was like, the vision and the visual of what true American farmland looked like heartland, as you said. And so when we were thinking about locations, we were trying to think of what really is, it was very important that we looked at like the center of the country that often gets overlooked, and place it there so that, real American farmland could be represented in a new way. And in a favorable way, so that, the sort of jerks, if you will, are the sort of new agers who feel, like these like Brooklynites who are moving to, goat farms and having an Instagram account that's curated a romantic version of what farming is, but that the reality of it, is so rarefied and so well studied and so complex. And like, obviously that's true, but sometimes it's not obvious to people who perhaps are like blinkered, and who sort of romanticize it in a way that's somewhat unfavorable, right? So they do, I feel like Mike and Rio do look like, sometimes, and I think that was, if anyone's gonna look like a jerk in this show, it's gonna be them, and the joke can be on them. And that, obviously, we have to have some antagonist, in order to make it comedy, you need to have your antagonistic characters like the Beau and the Bowmans in general, However, they are ultimately, what the kind of thematics that we wanted to unpack were inclusive, just being inclusive, and community, which is like sometimes, I mean, look, I do come from making independent movies, and I love comedy. I mean, I love it, and I want to write stories that are kind-spirited, because ultimately, that's just what I connect to, and I do find funny in the sweetness. Like, I think it's possible, and in this day and age, I do think it's really important. I would like to, sometimes I feel overwhelmed with, what can I do? What can we do? I mean, we're making TV and we're making films, but it's like, you can do a lot, you can make people feel good, and at least feel good about humanity or culture or community. And in a very small way, I feel like even if like 2 people saw it, and they felt like, oh, that was kind of sweet, and that felt like, regardless of what their politics are, they did, they came together at the end.
And
it's
you
like,
can do more than
and you don't
that,
have to be
too.
schmaltzy about that. It's like, you don't have to apologize for it. You can make it look beautiful, and then you can make people, you can have the subtlety and subtle, sophisticated sensibility whilst delivering that message, and that was important to me. So.
And you can do bigger things than that too. I think that one thing that the show does really well in terms of inclusivity is that we have Pam's character, we have the woman at the county fair who's so evil, who I'm guessing is the one that's mad about the eggs and is trying to get rid of her.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have all
Like,
these
you have,
ancillary,
like-
you have the broad spectrum, for
Right.
sure.
But it's not, their stories aren't about an act. They're just people that are on the show, which is the absolute best kind of representation that there is, where somebody can say, oh, that's me, and I'm not, a lesbian dying in a tidal wave. I am
Yes.
a lesbian that's just on this show, and that's great, and it's not about that. But I think one of the sharpest things, that line that when you're talking to, you're meeting your new gay neighbor, and you're like, oh my
Yes.
God, it's no big deal.
So
and
if
then
they
he's like,
haven't
when are
seen-
you gonna start treating me different? Or you
Yeah.
say you're gonna start treating me different, and he says,
Yeah,
starting when?
so, Rio meets, a gay man in the town, and so she's sort of like, oh my God, like, I'm from New York, like, I'm like, I get it, like, we're gonna be, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna treat you any different, and he's like, starting when? You know what I mean? Because she's like being a ridiculous person about it versus just being cool, So we definitely like to highlight those moments and try to show that, just because it's rural America doesn't mean it's vastly different. It just, than a city, in every function. Yes, there are large differences. Of course, that's where the basis of the comedy lies, but it does give you an opportunity, and Liz and I like to talk about cultural differences. Obviously, the fish out of water element is one of the largest components, but also sort of unearthing where we really align, and where things are not that different. But I like talking about politics through culture, because then it's like we're not talking about like who voted for who. It's not about that. It's just like, oh, that's interesting that culturally this is how this community does X, Y, or Z, and how we say, urbanites or whatever would do something.
And I wanted to ask you, you've directed a lot of comedy and shows that you have all enjoyed, like Insecure and Blackish. And my sister worked on
Powerhouse.
Desperate Housewives, so congratulations for surviving that. But I want to talk a little bit about comedy, since you have so much experience directing it. And what is the key about why this, for you, is succeeding, about the moments that they're making and the choices that they're making from a directorial standpoint that makes it work?
I mean, for sure, the talent is already there, so they already understand comedy, but I think it's like just the everyday, normal kind of things that are highlighted that that we're looking at in kind of just a little bit of a different way. That's a hard question for me.
Well, no, I would say, just to speak to how truly amazing Anya is in on set and with the actors, and also really adhering to the visual the sort of visual language that we've created on the show, which is unique to the show. And I feel like you really are sensitive to that. I found that, particularly your episode really sort of highlights comedy whilst also making it very cinematic, which is part of our like broad stroke sort of obsession on the show, at least from this EP. So, it's like, you really did come in and you were the only night shoot. Anya had the only night shoot that we had. And, I don't know. Obviously, all the shows you've worked on are incredible, and super sharp and funny. But this one you had to, maybe you can speak to trying to kind of like hold on to what we were trying to create cinematically.
Yeah, for sure, the space we were working in was a little bit difficult because we had a lot of constraints around us. We had a reality show building up right around the corner. So it was very interesting to kind of try and get angles and stuff like that. But one of the things that I talked to Lake about before I came in was how important it was for her to highlight the cinematic feeling of Middle America and the beauty of it. And so that was something that I really sought to do. And the opportunity I had was in the night shoot. We had this beautiful moon that night. We don't get to really see it in this, but being able to really do these nice shots of Ed and have the depth of the farmhouse in the background and just feel like kind of the vastness and like solo-ness of both, Rio and Ed together searching.
Yeah, and I feel like that, we hope to maintain that. That's something that, as, a creator and EP, and as the, a director of the pilot, but like in general, I'll be directing the first episode of the next season as well, that, it's so important to maintain those cinematic visuals, because I think it sets us apart a little bit. We have the luxury of being outside, and why not use it? That's a beautiful and also messy part of it. Sometimes it looks dusty, and and sometimes the light is too hot and makes everyone shadowy. And I'm like, I love it. And it's like blown out here and a drop off there. It's like I feel like I still want to kind of maintain that, because then it really plays. We were up there, we're like, oh, it plays in a big screen. It's like, oh, it's nice.
And I would say too, like in terms of comedy, for me, because the cast is so incredibly talented, like one of my favorite shots is the foreshot of them by the coop they're building.
Oh, yeah.
And Pam and Ed are like awkwardly looking at each other, and then you see Rio and Mike, in between them. But like that stuff is funny to me, just being able to see people's physicality and reaction to each other. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do.
And you're right, the outsideness of it really does set you apart, of like not being on close sets. And I wanted to ask because Anya is here and because you directed the pilot and because I understand that you actually got, I didn't realize they did this for television, but you got a reframe stamp, a reframeless stamp for.
So Women in Film is an incredible organization that I sit on the board of, and for many years, and we had created something called the Reframe Stamp, which is sort of a, stamp of approval for gender parity in production. And so we were awarded that, and we were really proud of that, because I think the only way to kind of change the industry is ostensibly from the inside, right? It's a systemic issue. So we work really, really hard to slow down in our hiring process and make sure that we populate our production staff, every department head, and in front of the camera, obviously, we're represented, but it's all the departments that need to sort of take the time to find the people who are qualified and that represent a diverse community.
Behind the scenes, that's where we need it even more desperately. All right, we have 3 minutes, so we can take like 2 questions. Who's got a question? Stand up and holler, or just sit there and holler.
Can you talk about acting with and directing the weasel?
He asked, can you talk about acting with and directing the weasel? Do you want to talk about directing it?
Directing the weasel.
And then I'll talk about acting with
Well,
it?
we had animal trainers, so you have one on either side, maybe one behind, right by the camera to kind of get its attention, like the key shot where she's jingling the keys. That's, the trainer helping. The attack, that was all Lake, because that was not a real weasel. That was a weasel on a piece of string pulled up Lake's arm. And it looks real, right? I mean, it looked amazing. That's acting. That's 100%
sometimes you're
acting.
like, you have moments on set and you're like, I made it. And that
She
that was one of those
totally
moments.
made it.
Put that in the
that
Emmy
was at, like-
reel.
and that was at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I think it was her last shot, and I was like, okay, she's like so tired because she's writing, directing, acting, editing, and then here we have this weasel on a string for her.
But that's a
Another-
very good question.
Another hyphenation. All right, one more. Does anybody else have one? I can't see, so if you do, just stand
You
up
don't
and
have
shout.
to. There's
You
no
don't have
pressure.
to.
All right, there is someone over
is
there.
one right there. Go ahead, my dear.
Sorry, where does it film? It films in Santa Clarita, which is outside of Los Angeles. It's sort of like a 45-minute drive up north. And, we would love to shoot in Nebraska, but it's not possible for us to get all of our crew and all of our cast to be there at the right, at the same time. It just wasn't, we had constraints in that way. However, we're not on sound stages at all. So we maintain, as much authenticity as we can, and we have, a multitude of like farm consultants, and, in fact, actually, Liz Merriweather's brother he makes documentary films on farming, which is part of what started seeding us, with all this kind of cool information about farming. So he consults as well, and obviously Pam Grier. But
I speak
But-
John Deere.
but also, what I just want to say about that too is, our writers' room. We were like, not only were we looking to sort of populate with gender diversity and diversity in general, but then also with people who are authentically from the Midwest. So I'd say like 80% of our writers' room is from the Midwest or small towns in the South. So we have, and with farming experience, which is incredibly difficult to find great comedy writers who are like have farming experience. It's like
Needle in a haystack?
tiny. But one of our head writers is actually from Omaha. So it's great to kind of infuse that authenticity. There's like one Jew from New York, which is like usually it's like all Jews from New York, It's like so.
And finally, I swear I've watched all 6 of them, and I'm sorry if I missed this. Is her name Rio because she dances on the sand? Why is her name Rio?
Okay, so Liz, I love naming characters, but Liz actually came up with Rio, and it wasn't until like we were filming that someone was like, "Oh, is it Rio because you're a lake and Rio means river?" Like, and I was like, "Yes." That was intended, but
Not Duran Duran related at all.
no, it's not Duran Duran related. However, I'm trying to get it in. I'm trying to get it in for like at some point, like some Rio dancing on the sand moment.
It's gotta happen. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all so much for being here. Season 2 of
Thank
Bless This
you.
Mess next year.